There's a move in many states to make sure school kids look at race in America in certain ways. Or, to be more accurate, that they don't look at race in one particular way. A Missouri proposal bans critical race theory in any class in any subject. Idaho passed a law banning critical race theory, saying it inflames divisions in the nation. A proposed Republican resolution in the Senate calls critical race theory an ideological tool that should not be taught in K-12 classrooms. So, what is critical race theory? And what's the big controversy? Time for a Truth-O-Meter Minute. Hi, I'm John Greenberg with PolitiFact. Critical race theory isn't a neatly packaged doctrine. It's a term for a diverse collection of ideas that share a common theme, that racism is part of a broad, subtle pattern in America. Critical race theory took shape in the 1980s when black legal scholars asked why the lives of so many people of color hadn't changed, despite all the civil rights laws and the court rulings in the decades before. Their answer? Racist impacts are woven into laws and practices, and show up in how schools are funded, who goes to prison, the sort of home loans people are offered, and other facets of life, large and small. In critical race theory, whether you're looking at schools, criminal justice, or jobs, the unequal result is no accident. The pieces work together to preserve a system that puts whites, as a group, on top and pushes others down. As law professor Kimberly Crenshaw wrote, critical race theory seeks to understand how a regime of white supremacy and its subordination of people of color have been created and maintained in America. Critical race theory is about who has power, who doesn't, and how those without power can push back. So let's sort out whether critical race theory is in America's classrooms. That isn't clear-cut. The sponsors of bills to ban it point to certain school materials they say are critical race theory. But that relies on a loose definition. You won't find teachers saying they are teaching critical race theory, mainly because it's too advanced for most high schoolers. Remember, this is stuff that shows up in law reviews and other academic journals. Arkansas Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson, talking about a law banning it in his state, said it does not address any problem that actually exists. The proposed U.S. Senate resolution said critical race theory goes against the anti-discrimination goals of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That's wrong. From its earliest days, many critical race supporters have said they support achieving equality for everyone. In 1994, a law professor in this field wrote that critical race theory was based on the quintessential American ideal that human beings are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights, that oppression is wrong and resistance to oppression right. Opponents of critical race theory object to the focus on race. Republican Representative Burgess Owens of Utah said, by focusing on skin color, the theory preserves racist thinking and undermines civil rights. This is a key point. Critical race theory rejects the idea that America is colorblind and that it should be colorblind, at least for now. In her book, Critical Race Theory, a primer, UC Berkeley's Kiara Bridges wrote that critical race theory embraces race consciousness in the service of racial justice, the unapologetic championing of race thinking as necessary, right, and good. The argument is that so long as the legacy of centuries of discrimination shapes reality today, failing to see skin color preserves the state of damage. They say there's a world of difference between old racist policies that aim to keep some people down and race-conscious policies that aim to lift them up. Racism, they say, doesn't lie in the awareness of skin color, but what you do with that awareness. There are bundles of ideas that are linked to critical race theory, but aren't necessarily the theory itself. These can take the form of racial awareness or diversity workshops, or, depending on how they're taught, units on slavery and its aftermath. To some opponents, these are all signs of critical race theory in the classroom. A common target is the New York Times 1619 Project. It started as a special edition of the New York Times Magazine and morphed into an educational package for schools. New York Times editor Jake Silverstein said the project's premise was to show that out of slavery and the anti-black racism it required, grew nearly everything that has truly made America exceptional. When Florida's State Board of Education banned critical race theory in June, It singled out the 1619 Project. Republican Governor Ron DeSantis commended them.
It departs from a historical record, and then when it goes into trying to create narratives that basically are teaching kids that the country is rotten and that our institutions are illegitimate, that is not worth any taxpayer dollars. It's wrong, and it's not something that we should do.
When it comes to historical accuracy, the New York Times got 2 letters of complaint co-signed by historians who raised several issues. Most of their points were matters of interpretation, not fact, but the newspaper did dial back its description of the desire to preserve slavery among some leaders of the American Revolution. Also, the materials sent to thousands of classrooms were vetted by history teachers and were not the same as the original newspaper articles. What's the key takeaway? Americans have long argued over the country's past and where it stands today. There's plenty of room for disagreement and debate, but we found that many of the attacks on critical race theory were wrong or exaggerated. That's it for this Truth-O-Meter Minute. If you want to learn more, come to our website, PolitiFact.com. If you appreciate the service, please support it. Our donors keep our fact checks free and available for everyone. Click on the Join Now button at the top of our page. And thank you.